All right, we have more changes unfolding in the money drain we're all witnessing in the U.S. national security state. Changes that have another $61 billion in American taxpayer money that Biden just signed away last week. But behind that bill, which we saw how hard, by the way, it's becoming for them to pass. In the end, it was only like around 100 members of Congress who voted no, but it took much longer to pass this time because public sentiment no longer supports it. Well, there's a larger, more disturbing agreement now in the works, something that will make this 61 bill look like chump change. And the Biden administration, the State Department, the Pentagon is working with the Zelensky cabinet on right now. This $61 billion that Biden just signed away last week, just the beginning, folks. There's like so much in the weeds that make this whole thing stink. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So in 1999, when the United States went to war with Afghanistan, the Clinton administration was saying the same things that the Biden administration is saying today, but about the Ukraine. That it's temporary, how Ukraine's winning, how Russia's on the defensive, talking about freedom, democracy, liberation, all the same bogus talking points that we now know were totally fake. And you can go back to the Washington Post reporting in 2019 called the Afghanistan Papers, where they obtained secret documents going into the Obama administration where they show we knew the Afghan army was a total joke, how it was made up of incompetent people, all while in public they were saying the complete opposite, keeping us there for 20 years, sucking trillions, beyond trillions of dollars out of the U.S. tax base and funneling it back into the military-industrial complex. And now that public support has essentially vanished for continuing to pay Ukraine's bills, it looks like the Biden administration's working on this new crazy way to get around this. And how do we know about it? Well, over the weekend, after Biden signed away this $61 billion, Ukrainian President Zelensky gave an interview about it, where he said something he wasn't supposed to. He slipped up, essentially, informing the world, basically, that an agreement's in the works that no one knows about that will guarantee U.S. aid, military aid, political aid for the next 10 years. No more fights in Congress over this. No more pleas by President Biden about how important Ukraine is. All of those internal domestic political fights would essentially stop over Ukraine. It would be like a new Israel-type agreement where fixed levels of spending are automatically allocated and congressionally approved. Now, this interview that Zelensky gave was in Ukrainian, so I'll just read the transcript from Ukraine's website. Look at this. And just real quick, this interview was supposed to be Zelensky announcing this $61 billion, thanking the U.S., taking questions about it, probably asking for more money in the process. But then during the interview, Zelensky said this, quote, "Also, our teams, Ukraine and the United States, are currently working on a bilateral security agreement, and we are already working on a specific text. Our goal is to make this agreement the strongest of all. We're discussing the specific foundations of our security and cooperation. We are also working on fixing specific levels of support for this year and for the next 10 years, including arms support, financial, political, and joint arms protection," unquote. The strongest agreement of all, he said. Right, so what the hell is he talking about? Well, a new U.S.-Ukraine agreement that I'm assuming Congress would have to vote on that would approve 10 years of funding up front. Here's David Sachs writing about this, saying, quote, "Zelensky announces that Ukraine's working on a security agreement with the U.S. that will fix levels of support for the next 10 years. The $61 billion was just the beginning. The next two U.S. presidents won't be able to switch it off," unquote. And earlier this month, we highlighted a report, an exclusive report from Politico. If you didn't watch that video, here's a reminder. Quote, "Trump-proofing weapons for Ukraine. Allies consider moving arms group into NATO. Officials are expected to discuss gradually moving the organization called the Ukraine Defense Contact Group into the alliance's control," unquote. So what's going on here? Well, watch Shay Bowes explain how this is going to work. Watch this.
And of course, it's also worth remembering that the US has already pumped over $100 billion of its own taxpayers' cash into the failing Ukrainian project. The scale of the spending is truly astounding. with two programs operating to fund Kiev. One is the Presidential Authority, and the other is the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, with one existing to replenish weapons and cash into the other. Since March 2022, $19 billion worth of orders have been financed into the U.S. military-industrial complex under this initiative alone.
Look, they've been working on this for a while, folks. The goal is to keep the war going. It's the new Afghanistan. The money train hasn't stopped, and think about it. The deep state gets what they want with this. No more congressional votes every few months to approve more Ukrainian funds. If you watched what just happened to get this $61 billion onto Biden's desk, it was a nightmare for them. It was a fight. And each time they ask Congress for more money for Ukraine, it gets harder and harder. And they're already asking for more, by the way. Only a few days ago, after this $61 billion was signed away, Reuters writes this, quote, Ukraine's $61 billion lifeline is not enough, unquote. This is insane, and it's why the Biden administration's actually trying to do this. They're trying to get one ironclad bill to the floor that locks in fixed levels of support for the next 10 years. That would be a major win for them, but a severe loss for the American people. We can't even afford our own budget. U.S. has a multi-trillion-dollar deficit each year. That means we lose trillions of dollars a year paying our own bills. We have to borrow money each year, borrow trillions of dollars. We had a $1.7 trillion deficit last year. What that means is that we had to borrow money to afford and pay for our budget. Our tax dollars didn't cover it. They weren't enough. And now the Biden administration secretly working with Ukraine on a way to pay their bills as well for the next 10 years. And we are paying their bills. It's not just military aid. We're paying pension plans for government workers, all types of stuff. So if you think this is worthwhile spending, if you support it, realize Ukraine cannot beat Russia. They have no chance, zero. And it's not just me saying this. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has said this multiple times, that the goal isn't to beat Russia. It never was. That Ukraine can't beat Russia. The goal is to degrade Russia, bog them down for as long as possible, which means they're wasting our money. This will always end in a negotiated settlement, or Ukraine will just be completely wiped out. So if that is the case, why are they wasting our money like this? This is your tax dollars, folks. If you wrote a check to the IRS a few weeks ago or did a direct deposit to them, they should tick you the hell off. And think what else it's going to do. It's going to lock up a future Trump presidency. It's a kill two birds approach. Should Trump try and cut off funding to Ukraine to force negotiations, force both sides to the table, like he's been promising he would do, saying he could end the war in 24 hours, right? Well, should he even try? That could be technically an impeachable offense. We saw this happen during the last impeachment. I mean, is it worthy of impeachment? No, but would they try? Sure. President isn't technically allowed to mess with congressionally approved funds. When those funds are approved and allocated to go to a specific place by Congress, President can't touch it without some special type of authority, like in the event of a national emergency. We spoke about that last video. But anyways, I don't want to get too deep into this. The point is, if what Zelensky just said is true, which we've seen other reporting that also talked about this, then this would be the start to another endless war. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.